The Chicago Bears are in a weird spot because they currently sit at 4-8, and as crazy as it is, they are still in the hunt. So today, I am joined by a very long-awaited guest to the show. Swifty from Swift Sports Network is on to help me break down if the Chicago Bears should go for the playoff push or if they should tank. But I am excited to have my man on. Swifty, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, couldn't be happier to be here. Long time coming. Been wanting to do a show with you for a long time, man.
And I know the guys over at Bears County Podcast surprised me that one time with you coming on. And a shout out to them. I was going to see if we could maybe have them come on tonight, but scheduling didn't work. But I know that they're pounding the table too because, I mean, Swifty, anything's possible at this point, right?
It really is, man. You've seen it. Crazier things happen in the NFL all the time. Teams go on runs, and we have the schedule down the stretch here to make some noise. It's not likely, but it is possible.
So we're here to break it all down for you guys with our thoughts. But before we begin this episode, make sure to smash that like button on this video, whether you want the Bears to tank or you want them to go for the playoff push, and throw your thoughts in the comment section below. For Swifty and I will be replying to your guys' comments once this video is posted. But remember, the big thing is that the number one overall pick is owned by the Carolina Panthers, who just keep losing games, which is great for the Bears. And the Bears still could make the playoffs with having that number one overall pick. So Swifty, let's kick things off. Let's talk about the Bears schedule. I want you to say, when we go game by game, which way you're leaning, if it's a win or a loss. Does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's start off right quick for the viewers here. The Bears currently are 4-8 and are 500 after their last 8 games. So 4-4 after getting rid of Chase Claypool, which has been great. The defense has become a top 10 unit across the board. The offense has actually become a top 20 unit across the board. And our remaining schedule is ranked 20th in the NFL from an easy standpoint. So not too terrible. In the remaining games of the week, for the weeks, is week 14 against the 9-3 Detroit Lions, week 15 against the 7-5 Cleveland Browns, week 16 against the 3-10 Arizona Cardinals, week 17 against the 6-6 Atlanta Falcons, and week 18, which could be a playoff game depending on how this goes, against the Green Bay Packers, who currently sit at 6-6. So Swifty, let's start things off. Week 14 against Detroit at Soldier Field. Detroit is 9-3. We barely lost to them last time. What are your thoughts on this game and why?
This is the big one. I mean, that's the game that really matters when it comes down to it. In order for us to have any chance of making the playoffs, we have to win out. And it starts this week in Detroit at home against the team that we had on the ropes just 2 weeks ago. And our coaches have 2 weeks to prepare for this game. So this is the big one. This is where it all starts. And I think we have a shot, but we're gonna find out about these coaches this weekend.
So Swifty, I know you've talked about it on your show before, but what did the Bears do wrong last time? I mean, there's some pretty blatantly obviously things that went wrong with the team in the fourth quarter that made them lose that game against Detroit. But what are some of the things that people aren't looking at that's going to impact this game and how Chicago can beat Detroit at home?
To me, the thing that went wrong was the coaches. I mean, they were coaching scared. They're both inexperienced coaches, so this is the first time really in their tenures in Chicago where you have leads and you're trying to protect them late in the game. A lot of times they've been trying to come back and take those leads late, so they played a little too conservative. It's almost like they're like, hey, we have the lead late, let's just not mess it up. And they just got too conservative in Detroit, and it ended up costing us the game. This time around, they have an extra week to game plan. It's at home, and they have a chance to go back and look at the mistakes they made in Detroit, fix those, and then better that game plan where they had success against this team.
I like the sound of that. So Swifty, where are you leaning? Are you leaning this as a win or are you leaning this as a loss?
Man, I want to lean win because of all those things I said. The problem is we haven't won back-to-back games with Matt Eberflus yet. And I just don't have enough confidence in these coaches to say we're going to get the win. But, man, I'm hopeful, and I'm really, really rooting hard for that we can surprise the world and beat the Lions this week, because nobody thinks we can beat them. Even after what we did 2 weeks ago, people still think we're a laughing stock and the Lions are a Super Bowl contender.
It sounds like you want to say win. So if we chalk this up as a win, the Bears are 5-8. Am I able to chalk you up as a W, or
let's
do you want to go?
Let's put it down. We'll put it down. We got to keep it alive.
So Bears are 5-8 after week 14 against the Detroit Lions. Then week 15, they go on the Great Lakes still, but they're in Cleveland against the currently 7-5 Cleveland Browns, who have Joe Flacco as their quarterback. Swifty, are you going win, loss, and why?
We got to win that one, man. Especially if we can pull off this win in Detroit, heading to Cleveland, playing against potentially Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns without Deshaun Watson, without Nick Chubb, a team that's reeling and on the verge of missing the playoffs, and we're a team that's turning around. We got to win that game. That's a must win.
I'm with you, but what scares me the most is that Cleveland defensive line. I know that we have a different offensive line, a much better offensive line, but Braxton Jones or Darnell Wright versus Myles Garrett, that kind of makes my bones shake a little bit. How are you feeling so far in regards to the game plan against Cleveland?
That's the matchup, and we're going to have to see them use Cole Kmet and these other tight ends and running backs to chip and help on Myles Garrett, because we've seen it against the Lions. Darnell Wright held his own for the majority of the game against Aiden Hutchinson. Now, Myles Garrett is on another level above Hutchinson. So maybe Darnell Wright can play pretty well over there most of the game, but you got to give him some help. And also, you never know where he's going to come from. If he might line up on Darnell Wright for 2 or 3 plays and not have success, and then say, hey, I'm swapping right over here. I'm going to come at Braxton Jones. And then he can line up on the interior and try to come on the inside of the line as well. So he's a guy you just have to game plan for and be aware of where he lines up and help out your offensive lineman.
And you know what? I like that too for the Bears in this situation, because Joe Flacco is slower than paint drying, which we all know. We've seen him run before. And even in his prime, he couldn't run. But Montez Sweat and Yannick Ngakoue, maybe Javon Dexter in there, I could see them going after it. And then, like you said, you don't have Chubb, so you don't have a good blocking running back there either. Could be a matchup. What are you thinking from a defensive side?
I think we're going to have, if Joe Flacco's the quarterback, we're going to have to put pressure on him. He's an experienced guy. He's been in the league a long time. He won a Super Bowl, 18 years ago? But he's not there anymore. He's a guy who his best football is way, way behind him. And we've been able to stop better quarterbacks this year. So I think that's a game where you come out, put pressure on him. I think obviously the Browns would try to run the ball a ton, but our run defense has been good. So if we could beat the Lions, I think we could beat the Browns.
So it sounds like you're chalking up another W.
Let's do it.
All right. So we're 6-8 entering week 16 against a team that the Bears, this is where things get interesting, because you kind of want Arizona to win that game for the pick, depending on what the Bears do in the first 2 games. But we're acting like the Bears are now making a playoff push. So Arizona at Soldier Field, they're currently 3-10. How you feeling about this, Swifty? Win, loss, and why?
Man, this is one where, like you said, it's really good for our draft position if the Cardinals get a win. So it's one I'm always rooting for the Bears to win. And if we somehow pull out a win against Detroit and then against Cleveland, we gotta beat Arizona. We gotta smack them, and because we're probably a better team than the Cardinals right now. Kyler Murray's still kind of shaking off the rust from that torn ACL. They have a new head coach since he was the starter last year. It was Cliff Kingsbury. So he's just getting used to a new head coach. There's a lot of things that are just not quite settled there at Arizona. They remind me of us last year, a team that just doesn't have the talent to compete yet, but might win a couple games. But I think we can definitely beat the Cardinals. They're probably the worst team on our schedule remaining.
So that's a 4-game winning streak now. Just keep that in mind. So now the Bears, just putting that out there, we went from Flus never winning back-to-back games, and now he's on a 4-game win streak.
It all depends on this weekend against the Lions. That's what it comes down to, yeah.
So just to answer the question of pretty much the title of the show, if you beat Detroit, you're going for the playoffs, and if you lose to Detroit, are you going for draft picks?
Probably if we lose to Detroit, I would say we're as close to mathematically eliminated as possible. And at that point, yeah, you're just evaluating the coaches and posturing for draft position.
You want Luke Getsy gone, don't you?
From what I've seen so far, Yes, I'm not confident in him as a play caller. I think he's in over his head a little bit. But that being said, I do know that people get better. He's a human. There's been a lot of play callers who started out their careers bad and then got better. If he makes some adjustments and can show us something in these last 5 games, if we could come out and win these next 5 games and make a playoff push, I'd eat my words and be like, you know what, Luke Getsy, you showed me something. But from what I've seen so far, no, I don't have the confidence that he's going to show me that.
It's amazing how last year he was considered a head coach candidate at one point in the season. And then now everyone's standing outside Hallis Hall with, their pitchforks, like, get this guy out of town at the moment. But I agree with you. So let's go back to the schedule. So the Bears after Arizona are now 7-8. And they have Atlanta at Soldier Field on New Year's weekend. 6-6 Falcons used to playing in a dome. Ryan Pace's old team. You're now making a push. What are you feeling with this game? Win, loss, and why?
In this scenario, I feel like if you come into this game at 7-8, depending on where the Falcons were at this point, they would be somewhere between 6-8 and 7 and whatever. My math's off right now. But the Falcons are going to be right there. Currently, they are in the playoffs. Yep. They are their division leader. Now that's partly because their division is awful and they're leading their division at 6-6. They got the Bucks and Saints right behind them at 5-7. But the Packers, who will play the week after, also 6-6 and are also in the playoffs right now. So I think either way, even if we don't win those 3 games before, we're going to be playing potential spoiler for these last 2 weeks against teams that are right on the edge of playoff contention. So we're either going to be, if we win those games, then this is fighting for our life and a chance at the playoffs. If not, then this is upset time and trying to knock the Falcons and Packers out of the playoffs. But at this point, we're going with your hypothetical. If we win those first 3, I think we'd have to come and beat the Falcons as well. They're kind of a one-dimensional offense. Desmond Ridder doesn't scare me much. They got a pretty good defense, but it's not the best in the league. You want to stay away from Jesse Bates. And I think that's a team we could beat if we shut down Bijan Robinson.
So a one-dimensional offense, a pretty good defense. It sounds like Ryan Pace is in their front office. Oh, wait, he is in their front office. That's why they're that way. Oh, that makes sense. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think that if you are on a hot winning streak, you got to make that push, and you could be a spoiler and also help your wild card chances, because who knows what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. There's so many scenarios, but the Bears are in the hunt. But Swifty, last game to go over before we're done with this episode. Week 18 in Green Bay. Time has not been determined yet. Green Bay could easily also be 8-8 entering this game. So this could be technically a playoff game to enter the playoffs, which the Bears and Packers have done 3 times over the last decade. Has our heart been broken every time? Yes, it has. Not this time, though. So, Swifty, you're at Lambeau. You are hot. You're on a hot streak. Your offense is moving. Your defense is still red hot. How you feeling against the Packers in Week 18?
I think I have to break our hearts here, man. I don't have the faith that Getsy can win all 5 of these games. And I think even if we got into this situation, it would be kind of similar to what the Lions did last year. You end the season hot. The Lions actually, same thing. They played the Packers last game of the season, but they beat them, but failed to get in the playoffs. For that to happen, we probably have to lose one of the games earlier. So I think there's a couple scenarios here. And the one we're playing where they enter the game winning 4 straight or 5 straight total before the bye week, I think we'd probably get out coached by the Packers in that one. I think Matt LaFleur, he's the better coach, and when it all comes down to a game like that, I think coaching really matters. And I think we've seen recently that right now Matt LaFleur was the guy in Green Bay, and Luke Getsy, and even I forget the guy who went to the Jets, but their offense.
Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett as well. Neither of them have had success without Aaron Rodgers or outside of Green Bay, whereas Matt LaFleur is taking Jordan Love, a guy who I'm still not very high on. I think he has a lot of weird mechanic issues and some awareness questions, and he makes him look like a good quarterback. And to me, that's really good coaching. So unfortunately, I think in this situation, we'd probably blow it and be heartbroken and used to it, but we would finish the season pretty strong and playing meaningful football the rest of the year. But in another world, I'd say if we lose this week to Detroit and then we win these next 4, knock Green Bay out of the playoffs and win our final game, probably the better situation now that I thought about it a little bit.
So overall, to answer the question for everybody, are you going for the playoffs or are you tanking? Are you tanking at this point?
I'm not tanking. I think it's too important for this roster that has experienced so much losing with Justin Fields, all these young guys, and the coaching staff, that if we want to turn the corner and be a real legitimate playoff contender next year, I think winning games, learning how to put teams away and play mistake-free football is really important down the stretch of the season, and more important than a draft pick when we already have the Panthers potentially number 1 pick. And at that point, we control the draft. Like, say we win 4 of these next 5 and we get pick 1 and pick 12, something like that, right? And it's like, even then you control the draft because you can move down from 1 and acquire multiple other picks, still have 2 first rounders, get your second back. There's so much draft capital we have going forward that I think winning a couple games and not having such a losing culture in the locker room is really important, because they've lost so many games these last couple of years.
And I know you're a Chop Robinson guy, so if we end up falling to 12, I mean, Chop's right there for the taking.
Chop, baby. Hey, chop.
That's what I'm saying. But, Swifty, this was fun, man. I appreciate the insight. I know there's 2 separate ways you can look at this. And, we're on Twitter. We see that there's a split between what people want to do.
Oh, yeah.
But the mood's going to change after the Detroit game. It's going to be whatever happens in that game, like we said, that's where it's just going to split off to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, which is fine because there's still hope. But I think this team still should win a couple more games this year just to get that winning feeling to make you want it more. I'm with you there, man.
100%, man. And like you said, it's all going to come down to this game against Detroit this weekend. If we win it, this fan base is going to be on a high. You'll see people talking Super Bowl and crazy stuff. And it'll be like, calm down, guys. We just won a game in 2 straight. But when we beat the Lions, there's going to be a lot of people talking smack all over Twitter and having high hopes. But if we lose it, you'll have a lot of people who are just completely done, fire everybody, draft a new quarterback, everything. So this is it. This is a big breaking point, the biggest game of the season by far, in my opinion.
And I'm all for it. But Swifty, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to do, when we get closer to the draft, we'll do another video to go through who we want to take.
100%, brother. Love being on the show, man. Shout out to everybody who's watching, and we'll have to do it again for sure.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago with our special guest, Swifty from Swift Sports Network. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button and put your thoughts in the comment section. But as always, bear down, baby.